Good night, Father. His voice was colder than the marble floor I was collapsing onto. My son, Ethan. He slipped my cell phone into his pocket. Then he walked out. I heard the metallic click of the key turning in the lock. The heavy deadbolt slid into place. He left me there to die, clutching my chest, my heart failing, all for the fortune I spent 40 years building. He thought the old builder was finished. He thought my weak heart would do his dirty work. He forgot one crucial detail. I built my empire from dust, and I wasn't about to let him demolish it. If you're listening to this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. It helps to know I'm not alone in this nightmare. My name is Arthur Vance, and I built this city. Not every brick, of course, but enough to matter. 40 years ago, I had a borrowed shovel, a relentless drive, and Mary, my wife. She was the foundation I built everything on. We turned empty lots into skyscrapers, legacies of steel and glass, hundreds of millions of dollars. I did it all for them, for Mary, for my daughter Sarah, and for my son Ethan. I thought wealth was a shield. I thought it protected the ones you love from the harshness of the world. I was wrong, dead wrong. I didn't realize the greatest danger wasn't outside my walls. It was growing inside my own home. The hunger I nurtured in my own son, Ethan, 35 years old, handsome, charming, and utterly hollow inside. I gave him everything, the Ivy League education, a vice presidency in my company he didn't earn, a generous trust fund that flowed like water. I thought I was setting him up for success. Instead, I crippled him. He never learned the value of $1 because he never had to bleed for one. He saw my wealth not as a responsibility, but as a birthright, a prize waiting to be claimed. And he was tired of waiting. His patience had run out. The cracks started years ago. They widened when Mary passed away. 3 years ago, cancer took her fast. She was the glue that held us together, the moral compass that guided us. Without her, Ethan drifted. Small loans never repaid. Bad investments. I covered up. Whispers of high-stakes poker games. I ignored it all. I thought I could fix him. I wasn't fixing him. I was enabling a monster. It came to a head on a cold Tuesday evening. The evening everything shattered. We were in my study. The room smelled of old leather and an older scotch. The fireplace crackled, casting dancing shadows on the walls lined with awards and blueprints, but the warmth didn't reach the cold tension in the room. The air was thick with unspoken resentment. Ethan was pacing on the antique Persian rug, his expensive Italian shoes wearing a path in the delicate fibers. His face was flushed, his eyes darting around the room, looking for an escape. He looked cornered. He always looked cornered when he needed money. His wife, Laura, sat rigidly in the armchair. Her expression was carefully neutral, a porcelain mask, but her knuckles were white as she gripped her designer handbag. A handbag that cost more than my first car, Laura. She was the amplifier of Ethan's greed. She had a taste for luxury that surpassed even his, and a cold ambition that frightened me. I always felt she wasn't just along for the ride. She was driving the car, and she didn't care who got run over. "Dad, you have to understand," Ethan pleaded. He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair. A nervous habit he'd had since he was a boy, caught lying. "This isn't just a bad investment. I owe people." He paused, lowering his voice for dramatic effect. "Dangerous people." "How much?" I asked. My voice was tired. I was 70 years old. My heart, the doctors warned me, was a ticking clock. The stress of Ethan's constant crises was taking its toll. I felt a dull ache starting in my chest, a familiar warning shot. He hesitated. He looked at Laura. She didn't blink. She just stared at me, then gave a small, sharp nod, a silent command. 2 million, he whispered, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. By Friday, the number hit me like a physical blow. I gripped the arms of my chair. The ache in my chest sharpened. 2 million? Ethan, what have you done? Is it gambling again? I knew it was more than gambling. I had heard rumors that terrified me. Is it Marcus Thorne? I asked, my voice low and steady. Ethan flinched at the name. Marcus Thorne, my old business rival, a shark who smelled blood in the water. A man who built his fortune by destroying others, A vulture who picked the bones clean. I knew Ethan had been seen with him. I just didn't want to believe my son would crawl into bed with that snake. It doesn't matter who it is, Ethan shouted. He slammed his fist on my desk. The sound echoed in the quiet room. The crystal decanter rattled. What matters is that they will ruin me. They threatened Laura. They threatened the company's reputation. They threatened my life. His voice cracked. He looked desperate. But his eyes? They were calculating, measuring my reaction. Laura spoke up. Her voice sharp and cold, cutting through the tension like a razor blade. He needs the money, Arthur. You have hundreds of millions. You won't even notice it. She stood up, smoothing her expensive skirt. She looked down at me, her eyes hard as diamonds. Are you going to let your own son be destroyed over a rounding error? A rounding error. My life's work. My legacy. A rounding error. The audacity was staggering. A rounding error, I said, standing up slowly. The tightness in my chest intensified. I ignored it, fueled by a surge of anger and profound disappointment. This is not about the money, Laura. It's about responsibility. It's about character. I looked directly at Ethan, and it's about the truth. The truth was something Ethan had avoided his entire life. It was time he faced it. Ethan, I said, my voice hardening. I know about the Westlake project. He froze, utterly still. The color drained from his face. He stopped pacing and stared at me, his eyes wide with raw fear. The mask slipped. The charming sun was gone. A trapped animal remained, and I knew trapped animals were the most dangerous. I had the accountants audit the books, I continued. I had suspected something was wrong for months. Ethan had been too eager to handle the project alone, too secretive about the details. You embezzled nearly $1 million from that project. I let the words hang in the air, heavy, suffocating. You created fake invoices, I said, my voice rising with every word. Shell companies. You cooked the books to hide it. And I know Thorne helped you set them up. He took a cut, didn't he? I pointed a shaking finger at him. That's not a mistake, Ethan. That's a crime. A felony. Dad, I was going to pay it back, he whispered. His bravado was gone, replaced by desperation. I just needed a little time. The investment with Marcus, it was a sure thing. We were going to double the money. I swear. He actually believed his own lies. That was the tragedy of it all. There are no sure things in life, Ethan, I roared. The pain in my chest exploded. I gasped, clutching my side, leaning against the desk for support. There is only hard work, integrity, and the choices we make. I struggled to breathe. The room felt like it was closing in. I built this company on my name, my reputation. I will not let you and Marcus Thorne destroy it. I had to stop him, even if it meant breaking him first. I walked over to the large oil painting of Mary above the fireplace. Her smiling face watched us. Judging us, behind it was the safe. I spun the dial, the tumblers clicked. I opened it and pulled out a thick folder. It contained the evidence of Ethan's crimes, the proof of his betrayal, and the draft of the new will. I have made a decision, I said. I looked at my son, trying to find the boy I used to know, the boy who used to run to me when he was scared. The boy I held in my arms when Mary died. That boy was gone. This man was a stranger, a dangerous stranger. I am meeting with Mr. Davis, my lawyer, tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. I am changing the will. The silence that followed was heavy and suffocating. Laura gasped. Her hand flew to her mouth. Her eyes widened in shock. Ethan just stared at me, his face expressionless. A stone wall. I am removing you as the executor, I continued. My voice trembled with emotion, but I pushed forward. Sarah will take over the company. She has the intelligence, the integrity, and work ethic that you lack. Sarah, my daughter, a journalist in Seattle. She always saw Ethan for what he was. I never listened. I should have listened. The bulk of the estate will be put into a trust for your children, managed by Sarah, I said, tossing the folder onto the desk. The papers scattered. You, Ethan, will receive a small monthly stipend. Enough to live on, but not enough to gamble with. Not enough to live the life you think you deserve. I paused, taking a deep breath. This was the hardest part. The final cut, and I am reporting the embezzlement to the board. They may decide to press charges. You need to face the consequences of your actions, Ethan. It's the only way you will ever learn. I thought I was saving him. I didn't realize I was signing my own death warrant. Ethan stared at me. He didn't yell, he didn't beg. He just looked at me with a hatred so pure, so cold, it chilled my blood. It was a look I had never seen before, a look that said I was no longer his father. I was an obstacle in his path. And obstacles get removed. You are ruining my life, he said. His voice was low and dangerous. A viper's hiss. I am trying to save it, I replied. The words were futile, useless against the wall of his greed. He turned and walked out of the study, his footsteps echoing on the marble floor. Laura hesitated for a moment, looking at me with a mixture of fear and contempt, then followed him. I heard the front door slam. The sound shook the foundations of the house I had built, the house that was now falling apart. I sat down, rubbing my chest. The tightness was worse now. Spreading across my chest like a wildfire, I fumbled with the small bottle in my pocket and slipped a nitro pill under my tongue. I waited for the medicine to ease the pressure. I closed my eyes. I prayed that the ultimatum would wake him up. I was so tired, so very tired. That night I went to bed early. A profound weariness settled over me. The house felt too big, too empty, without Mary. The silence was deafening. Mrs. Gable, my housekeeper, usually stayed late, but I'd given her the evening off. I wanted privacy for the confrontation with Ethan. Another mistake, one of many. I looked at Mary's picture on the nightstand. Her smiling face, usually a comfort. Tonight it felt like an accusation. "Oh, Mary," I murmured. "What happened to our boy? Where did we go wrong?" I drifted into a restless sleep, haunted by nightmares of crumbling buildings and Ethan's cold, empty eyes. I woke up suddenly. The room was pitch black. A crushing weight pressed down on my chest, squeezing the air from my lungs that felt like a steel band tightening. Tighter, tighter. The pain radiated down my left arm, hot and searing, a burning knife twisting in my chest. This time was different, stronger, more terrifying. I knew instantly what it was. My weak heart was giving out. The ticking clock had finally struck midnight. I gasped. The air felt thick, heavy. I fumbled for the lamp on the nightstand, knocking it to the floor. The crash seemed deafening in the silence. I collapsed onto the floor, clutching my chest. The pain was blinding, paralyzing. "Help!" I cried out, my voice weak, strained, a pathetic whimper. "Help me!" I reached for my cell phone. It was charging on the nightstand. My fingers brushed against the cold metal, but I was too weak to grasp it. My vision blurred. The room started to spin. I was dying, alone. The bedroom door opened. Light flooded the room. Ethan stood there, outlined against the hallway light, a dark silhouette. He must have used his spare key to get back into the house. I hadn't thought to take it back after the argument. A fatal mistake. "Dad?" he asked. His voice was strangely calm. No alarm, no panic, just a casual question, like he was asking about the weather. Relief washed over me, overwhelming the pain for a fleeting second. "My boy, he came back, Ethan," I gasped. The word barely a whisper. Ambulance. Heart. Call. Ambulance. Please. I held out a trembling hand towards him, waiting for him to help me up. He walked slowly into the room. He didn't rush to my side. He didn't kneel down to help me. He just watched me, struggling for air on the floor, his face impassive, cold, detached. He was watching me die. I saw his eyes dart around the room. They landed on my cell phone on the nightstand. He walked over and picked it up. He looked at the screen, then at me. "Please," I begged. Tears stung my eyes. The realization of my helplessness, my vulnerability, it was crushing. "Ethan, I'm dying. Please, son, help me." He looked at the phone, then back at me. And then a slow, terrible realization dawned on his face. I saw the calculation happening behind his eyes. The gears turning, the opportunity presenting itself. The mask fell away completely. The monster was revealed. If I died tonight, the will wouldn't be changed tomorrow. He would inherit everything. The embezzlement would be forgotten. His debts to Thorn would be paid. His future secured. All I had to do was die, and all he had to do was nothing. Ethan, I pleaded. Desperation made my voice crack. Don't do this. I'm your father. He slipped the phone into his pocket. He looked at me one last time. His eyes were cold, empty. No hesitation, no remorse. The son I loved was gone. Good night, father, he said. His voice devoid of emotion. A flat monotone, he walked out of the room. He closed the door behind him. I heard the distinct, metallic sound of the key turning in the lock. The heavy, antique deadbolt sliding into place. The sound of a coffin nail being hammered home. My son locked me in my room. He took my phone. He ignored my pleas to call an ambulance. He left me to die. I was alone, trapped. Dang. The initial wave of agony subsided slightly, leaving a dull, heavy ache, a bruise deep within my chest. I lay on the floor. The plush carpet was cold against my cheek. The silence of the room was broken only by my own labored breathing. The physical pain was immense, but the emotional devastation was paralyzing. The realization of what Ethan had done hit me harder than the heart attack. It shattered my soul. My own son, the boy I taught to ride a bike, the boy I held when he was scared of the dark. He had left me to die, for money. The depth of his betrayal was a black hole that threatened to swallow me whole. I closed my eyes, accepting the darkness. But something inside me refused to break, refused to surrender. Day one began with the pale light of dawn creeping through the heavy curtains. I was alive. The immediate crisis had passed. Maybe the nitro pill I took earlier had helped. But I knew I was in grave danger. I was weak, dehydrated. The damage to my heart was likely severe. Every breath was a struggle, a fight for air. Thirst was the first enemy. My throat felt like sandpaper. My lips were cracked. My tongue felt swollen and heavy in my mouth. I had to get to the ensuite bathroom. I needed water. Water meant survival. It took me nearly an hour to crawl the 20 feet to the bathroom. Every movement sent waves of nausea and pain through my body. I dragged myself across the floor, inch by agonizing inch. My body protested every movement. I finally reached the bathroom. The cold tiles bit into my skin. I dragged myself to the sink, pulled myself up using the marble countertop. My arms trembled with the effort. My legs threatened to buckle. I turned the faucet. The sound of running water was the sweetest music I had ever heard. I drank greedily. The cold water soothed my parched throat. It revived me slightly, cleared my head. I splashed water on my face, trying to wash away the despair, trying to wake myself up from this nightmare. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. I looked like a ghost, pale, sweaty, eyes sunken and hollow. My face was gray, my lips blue, but I was alive, and as long as I was alive, there was hope. A flicker of defiance in the darkness. I crawled back to the bedroom door, solid oak, reinforced with steel. I had installed it myself when the children were young, worried about security. I had always been paranoid about break-ins, about the dangers lurking outside. I never imagined the danger would come from within. I never imagined my own son would be the monster I needed protection from. Now, the precautions I took to protect my family were the walls of my prison. I pounded on the door weakly, my fists barely making a sound, calling out until my voice gave out. Ethan, Laura, please, help me. I need a doctor. No answer. The house was vast, the walls thick. My cries were swallowed by the silence. But I heard something else, faintly, from downstairs. Music, classical music, Mozart, Ethan's favorite. They were relaxing while I was dying. They were celebrating my impending death, waiting for me to fade away. The sound pierced through my despair, igniting a spark of anger. A cold, hard resolve settled within me. Rage replaced the fear. I would not let him win. I would not die on this floor like a dog. I would fight for Mary, for Sarah, for myself. I was Arthur Vance. I was a builder, and I would not be broken. I started to survey my prison, not as a victim, but as a builder. I knew this house better than anyone. I designed it, built it from the ground up. I knew every blueprint, every wire, every hidden space. There had to be a way out. I just had to find it. I tried the windows. Large floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the garden. Locked. Electronically sealed by the modern smart home system. Ethan controlled it now. He had the remote. He had my phone. I was on the 3rd floor. The glass was reinforced. Triple glazed. Breaking it was impossible, especially in my condition. I didn't have the strength to lift a book, let alone smash a window. I checked the vents, too small to crawl through. I checked the fireplace. The chimney was blocked, sealed years ago when we switched to the modern heating system. Dead ends. Everywhere I looked. Dead ends. I sat on the edge of the bed, exhausted. Despair threatened to overwhelm me. The silence pressed in on me. I had built a perfect prison for myself. The irony was bitter. It tasted like bile in my throat. The urge to give up was strong. The pain in my chest flared up, reminding me of my failing body. It would be so easy to just lie down. Let the darkness take me, to join Mary. To escape the pain, the betrayal. But the image of Ethan's cold eyes, the sound of the music downstairs, the thought of him inheriting everything I had built. It fueled my rage. I had to survive. I had to stop him. I had to make him pay. While I sat there, trapped, my mind raced. I thought about the things I hadn't told Ethan yet. The things I discovered while investigating the Westlake embezzlement. It wasn't just the $1 million, it was worse. So much worse. I found documents, hidden in a safety deposit box. Ethan thought I didn't know about. I had the spare key. Loan agreements. Not from a bank. From Marcus Thorne. But the collateral wasn't just Ethan's assets. It was company shares. Shares he didn't own yet. And the signatures. One of them was Mary's. Dated just weeks before she died. When she was weak, heavily medicated, confused. My blood ran cold. Mary despised Thorne. She would never have dealt with him. She would never have risked the company. The signature was shaky, forced, coerced, maybe even forged. He didn't just steal from me. He used his dying mother. He preyed on her weakness. The realization was a knife twisting in my gut. This wasn't just greed, it was monstrous. This was the real betrayal, the one that cut the deepest. Day 2 dawned gray and cold. The sky outside was overcast, reflecting my mood. Hunger gnawed at my belly, a constant, sharp pain. I drank more water from the bathroom tap. It did little to ease the emptiness. It just made me feel bloated and sick. I was weaker, my movements slower, my thinking foggy. The lack of food and the strain on my heart were taking their toll. My body was shutting down. The clock was ticking faster now. I heard them downstairs again. Ethan and Laura, they were arguing this time. Their voices were muffled, but I could hear the tension, the anxiety. They weren't celebrating anymore. They were worried. Good. I pressed my ear against the cold oak door, straining to hear every word. It's been too long, Laura's voice. I pitched, anxious. What if he's still alive? What if someone comes looking? The housekeeper? The gardener? Mr. Davis? No one is coming, Ethan snapped. His voice was strained, taut as a piano wire. I told Mrs. Gable he went on a sudden trip. I gave the staff the week off. Mrs. Gable, my loyal housekeeper for 20 years. He dismissed her like she was nothing. He paused. I heard the clink of ice in a glass. He was drinking, already celebrating. I canceled his appointment with Mr. Davis. I told him Dad was feeling unwell and needed to reschedule. I handled everything. Did you handle Marcus Thorne? Laura hissed, her voice laced with fear. He called again. He wants his money, or he wants the company. He knows about the will. He knows everything. So Thorne was pulling the strings. I should have known. I told you, Laura, once the old man is gone, we can pay Thorne off. Ethan replied, his voice tight. Just hold your nerve. A few more hours, and it will all be over. We'll be free. Free. They wanted to be free of me. Their confidence terrified me. They had thought of everything. They had isolated me completely. I was truly alone, buried alive in my own home, a tomb of my own making. I looked around the room again, desperate. My eyes scanned every corner, every piece of furniture, searching for something, anything, a weapon, a tool, a way out. My eyes fell on the large mahogany armoire in the corner. It was an antique, heavy, imposing. Mary had loved it. We bought it on our honeymoon in Europe. Memories of a happier time. A time when family meant love, not betrayal. And then a memory surfaced. A ghost from the past. A faint flicker of hope in the darkness. If this story has you on the edge of your seat, please hit the like button. And don't forget to subscribe. It helps our channel grow and bring more stories like this to light. It was that memory that saved me. It was decades ago, when Sarah was little. She was terrified of the dark, worried about monsters under the bed. To calm her fears, I installed a rudimentary security system. This was 30 years ago, before the smart home system, before the electronic locks and the reinforced glass. It was hardwired, separate from the main power. It included a silent alarm, connected directly to the private security company we used back then. The control panel was hidden. I had built a small compartment behind the armoire to house it. I had forgotten about it, buried under layers of modernization and upgrades. Forgotten by everyone, except me. Hope surged through me. Adrenaline flooding my veins, followed quickly by doubt. Could I even move the armoire? I was so weak I could barely stand. My body was failing me, and even if I could, would the old system still work? It had been decades. The wires might be corroded, the system disconnected. Had I even kept the service active? I paid so many bills automatically. I couldn't be sure. I hadn't thought about that security company in years. It was a long shot, a desperate gamble, a prayer in the dark. But it was the only shot I had. I had to take it. Moving the armoire seemed impossible. It was massive, solid wood, anchored to the floor by its own weight. I tried pushing it. It didn't budge. I pushed harder, using all my remaining strength, gritting my teeth against the pain. My chest burned in protest. Black spots danced before my eyes. I nearly passed out, forced to sit down and catch my breath. The pain was excruciating, a searing fire in my chest. I was too weak. The physical barrier felt insurmountable. I slumped against the armoire, tears of frustration streaming down my face, hot tears on my cold skin. I had failed. I was ready to give up, to accept my fate. But then I remembered who I was. I was Arthur Vance. I was a builder. I knew about leverage, about physics. I didn't need strength. I needed a tool. I needed leverage. I looked around the room. I found a heavy brass candlestick on the mantelpiece. Decorative, solid, and strong. I crawled over to it, my breath ragged, my vision blurry. I wedged the candlestick under the base of the armoire. I used it as a makeshift lever. I pushed down with all my weight. My body screamed in protest. Slowly, agonizingly, the armoire started to move, scraping across the wooden floor. The sound was deafening in the silence, a harsh, grating sound that echoed in the room. It sounded like a scream. I froze, listening. My heart pounded in my chest. Not with sickness this time, but with fear. I heard footsteps on the stairs. Fast, hurried. Ethan. He heard me. He stopped outside the bedroom door. I could hear him breathing, listening, checking for silence. I held my breath, terrified, my body trembling uncontrollably. If he came in and saw the moved armoire, it would all be over. He would know I was still alive, still fighting, and he would make sure I didn't survive the night. He would finish the job his betrayal started. I waited, motionless. The silence stretched for agonizing minutes. I could hear the blood rushing in my ears, the pounding of my own heart. Finally, the footsteps moved away. He was gone. He must have dismissed the sound as the old house settling. A lucky break. My first one. I continued pushing the armoire, inch by agonizing inch. driven by fear and adrenaline, until it was far enough from the wall for me to slip behind it. There, hidden in the shadows, covered in dust and cobwebs, was the small metal panel. It was rusted, forgotten, a relic of the past. I opened it, the hinges screeching in protest. Inside was the old control panel, a simple keypad, and a large red button, the panic button. With a trembling hand, I reached out and pressed the button. I pressed it hard, holding it down, praying to a God I hadn't spoken to in years. Please, let it work. Please, don't let me die here. I waited. Silence. No alarms rang, no flashing lights. It was a silent alarm. But what if it didn't work? What if the wires were cut? What if the security company had gone out of business? What if they ignored the signal, dismissing it as a malfunction in an old, forgotten system? The doubt was agonizing. I had played my last card, and possibly lost. The silence stretched on, amplifying my fear. I slumped against the wall, the dust choking me. Despair washed over me again. Colder, heavier. A crushing weight. I had failed. I was going to die in this room. Alone, betrayed, forgotten. I closed my eyes, exhausted. I surrendered to the darkness. Maybe this was it. Maybe this was how my story ended. Day 3 began. I was running on fumes. My vision was blurry. My head pounded with a dehydration headache. The hunger was a constant, gnawing pain, a void in my stomach. My body was shutting down. I knew I didn't have much time left. Hours, maybe minutes. I dragged myself to the armchair, facing the door. I had accepted my fate. If I was going to die, I would die with dignity. I wouldn't be found crawling on the floor, begging for mercy. I would face my executioner with my head held high. But then I thought about Sarah, my daughter, smart, strong. She never trusted Ethan. She always said he was a snake in the grass. I had dismissed her concerns as sibling rivalry. Jealousy. I owed her an apology. I owed her so much more. We had a scheduled call every Wednesday afternoon. Today was Wednesday. When I missed the call, would she worry? She knew about my heart condition. She knew about the tension with Ethan. She knew I never missed our calls. Never. A flicker of hope returned. Sarah, if anyone could save me, it was her. She was relentless, resourceful, a journalist's instincts. She wouldn't just accept Ethan's excuses. She would dig deeper. She would ask questions. The hope was fragile, a tiny flame in a raging storm. It was so easy to let it be extinguished by the reality of my situation. I clung to the thought of Sarah, visualizing her face, her voice, her determination. It was a fragile lifeline in the ocean of despair. I had to hold on. I had to believe in her. I had to survive until she realized something was wrong. The afternoon dragged on. The sun started to set, casting long shadows across the room. The room grew colder. I knew Ethan would have to check on me soon. He had to discover my body, play the grieving son, call the police, start the process of claiming his inheritance. He couldn't wait forever. The anticipation must be killing him. I decided I wouldn't go quietly. When he opened the door, I would fight. I grabbed the brass candlestick again. It wasn't much, but it was something. I would use my last breath to mark him, to show the world what he had done. My heart pounded, not with sickness this time, but with adrenaline. The fear of confrontation warred with the thirst for justice. The animal instinct to survive clashed with the desire for revenge. I gripped the candlestick, my knuckles white. I was ready. I was ready for the end, whatever it brought. It was late afternoon, the third day since the betrayal. I heard footsteps on the stairs. Slow, deliberate. Confident, they stopped outside my door. I heard voices, Ethan and Laura. It's time, Ethan said, his voice tight with anticipation. Let's get this over with. I need a drink. Are you sure? Laura asked, her voice trembling, nervous excitement. What if he smells? He's dead, Laura. He has to be, Ethan hissed. 3 days without food, water or medication, after a massive heart attack. No one could survive that. Not even him. He sounded so sure, so confident in my death. He underestimated me. He always did. I heard the key turning in the lock. The heavy click echoed in the silent room. This was it. The final confrontation. I raised the candlestick, preparing to lunge. The doors swung open. Ethan stood there, silhouetted against the hallway light. He had a handkerchief pressed to his nose, bracing himself for the smell of death. He took a deep breath and stepped into the room, ready to deliver the performance of his life. The grieving son, devastated by the sudden loss of his beloved father. He switched on the light. The room was flooded with brightness. He looked at the bed. It was empty. He turned, confused, and looked directly at me, sitting in the armchair. The candlestick held high. I was frail, weak. I looked half dead. My skin was gray, my eyes sunken. I was a shadow of the man I used to be. But I was alive, and I wasn't alone. Standing behind me, silent and imposing, were two uniformed police officers, their hands resting on their weapons, and next to them, her face pale with anger and relief, her eyes blazing with fury, was Sarah. The silent alarm had worked. It had triggered a low-priority alert at the old security company. They tried calling the house, the landline. Ethan had disconnected it. They tried my cell phone. It was off. They dismissed the alert as a malfunction, an old system glitching. But when Sarah called them, frantic because I had missed our scheduled call, Ethan was evasive, telling her I was asleep. Couldn't be disturbed. She remembered the old security system. She remembered me telling her about it years ago. A backup, a fail-safe. She begged them to check the alert again, to send a patrol car to the house. Sarah had flown across the country, the first flight from Seattle, arriving just minutes ago. She met the police at the house. One of them was Detective Miller, a sharp, experienced cop I recognized from the local precinct. They had bypassed the main entrance, come upstairs quietly, using the servants' staircase. They entered the room through the adjoining suite, using a hidden passage I had built for emergencies, a passage connecting the master bedroom to the nursery. Another detail Ethan forgot. I built this house. I knew its secrets. He only knew its price tag. They had been waiting with me, hidden in the shadows, listening to Ethan and Laura discuss how they would explain my death, a natural consequence of my weak heart. They confessed to everything before they even opened the door. They sealed their own fate. Ethan didn't just see me. He saw the end of his life. He saw the inheritance vanishing, the wealth slipping through his fingers. He saw the prison bars closing in on him. He saw his sister, the one he had always dismissed, the one he had always devastated, standing there as his judge, jury, and executioner. He opened his mouth. A sound came out that I will never forget. It wasn't a word. It wasn't a cry of surprise or anger. It was a scream, a high-pitched, piercing scream of pure terror and absolute ruin. A scream that echoed the crumbling of his world, the shattering of his dreams. He stumbled back, his eyes wide with disbelief, his face ashen. The handkerchief fell from his hand. He stared at me as if he was seeing a ghost, the ghost of the father he murdered. "Ethan," I said, my voice raspy but clear, amplified by the silence of the room. "You're late?" Laura appeared in the doorway, saw the scene, froze. She turned to run, but another officer was waiting in the hallway. She screamed too, a short, sharp cry of despair. The sound of a trap snapping shut. Detective Miller stepped forward, his voice calm, authoritative. The voice of justice. "Ethan Vance, you are under arrest for attempted murder, kidnapping, and elder abuse." Ethan collapsed to his knees, still screaming, as the handcuffs clicked shut on his wrists, the metallic sound echoing the click of the deadbolt. He looked at me, not with hatred, but with the desperate, terrified eyes of a trapped animal. The same look he had when I caught him embezzling, the same look he always had when his lies caught up with him. I felt no triumph, no victory, only a profound, crushing sadness, an overwhelming sense of loss. I had saved my life, but I had lost my son. The weeks that followed were a blur. Hospital lights, hushed conversations, the sterile smell of antiseptic, the rhythmic beep of the heart monitor. The damage to my heart was extensive. Dr. Chen, my cardiologist, said it was a miracle I survived. 3 days without proper medical attention. In my condition, he said my will to live, my stubborn refusal to die, had kept me going. Sarah never left my side. She was my rock, my seed, my savior. She took charge of the company, handling the crisis with a grace and strength I had always underestimated. She dealt with the media frenzy, the police investigation, the legal battles. She protected me from the ugliness of it all. She was the shield I thought wealth was. She was the child I deserved, the legacy I should have cherished. I had been so focused on Ethan, so obsessed with trying to fix him, that I had neglected the daughter who had always been there for me. I had been blinded by a father's love for his prodigal son. "I'm so sorry, Dad," she whispered one evening, holding my hand, tears streaming down her face. "I should have seen it. I should have stopped him. I knew he was capable of something terrible. But I never imagined this." "No, Sarah," I said, my voice weak but clear. "It was my blindness that led to this. I created the hunger in him. I spoiled him. I never taught him the value of hard work, of integrity." I paused, thinking of the forged signature, the betrayal of Mary, the depth of his depravity. I just never thought it would devour me. The realization was painful, but necessary. The truth hurt, but it also healed. Miss Davis came to the hospital. My lawyer, stern, ethical. He brought the paperwork. The new will, the one I was supposed to sign the day after the attack. I signed it, my hand still weak but steady, my resolve firm. Ethan and Laura would get nothing. Everything, the company, the estate, the money, went to Sarah. I also set up a charitable foundation in Mary's name, dedicated to helping victims of elder abuse. I wanted something good to come out of this tragedy. I wanted to honor Mary's life, her kindness, her compassion. Ethan's trial was quick. The evidence was overwhelming, the testimony of the police officers. Detective Miller's detailed report. The security company records Sarah's testimony. My own account. It left no room for doubt. The evidence of his embezzlement in the forged documents with Mary's signature painted a picture of a desperate man, driven by greed and entitlement. A man with no moral compass. Marcus Thorne was also arrested for extortion, fraud, and conspiracy related to the loans and the embezzlement. Ethan had turned on him, trying to save himself. There is no honor among thieves. Ethan was found guilty on all charges, sentenced to 25 years in prison. Laura took a plea deal. She testified against Ethan and Thorne. She received 10 years for her complicity. They turned on each other like rats in age. I never saw Ethan again. I couldn't bear to see him in that courtroom, stripped of everything, reduced to a number. He was still my son, and his ruin was my failure. A failure I would carry with me for the rest of my life. A year later, I sold the house. It was too full of ghosts, too tainted by the memory of those 3 days. The silence was no longer peaceful. It was haunting. I moved into a smaller apartment, overlooking the park. Sarah lived nearby. I am an old man now. My body is frail, but my spirit is strong. I have found a measure of peace. I spend my days reading, volunteering at the foundation, and watching my daughter build her own legacy. Sarah is running the company with a firm hand and a kind heart, proving to be a better leader than I ever was. Her legacy isn't just steel and glass. It's compassion and integrity. Father, since I think about Ethan, I wonder if he ever thinks about that night. I wonder if he feels any remorse. I don't know. I received a letter from him a few months ago, from prison. I couldn't bring myself to open it. Maybe one day I will. Maybe not. The other day I was sitting on a park bench, watching the children play. The sun was warm on my face. A little boy fell and scraped his knee. His father rushed over, picked him up, held him close, whispering words of comfort. Tears welled up in my eyes. It's the simple things we miss, the connections we fail make, the love we take for granted. I built an empire, but it almost cost me everything. In the end, it wasn't the wealth or the power that saved me. It was the will to live, the love of a daughter, and the realization that true legacy isn't what you leave behind. And the who you leave behind, it's not the buildings you construct, but the lives you touch, and that is an inheritance worth fighting for. Thanks for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to tell. Please rate it in the comments. If you felt what I went through, don't forget to subscribe. Your support means a lot because your time and your life matters.